Hi guys, welcome to my channel. Today we're going to actually do a rundown on Palantir and see what is this company worth. So right off the bat, Palantir's current revenue is 2.5 billion. Their number of outstanding shares is 2.4 billion. Their PE is at 235 billion, which is ridiculous, and their profit margin is 16%, which is pretty low. So for the future, we want to know what will be Palantir's yearly growth. So for most expectations, Palantir is expected to grow by 20% for the next 5 years. I think that's a little too low. It's a company that's growing fast and it hasn't even fully matured into its market yet. So I'm going to say 25 is a bit low, but since the analysts are saying that, we're going to give it 20. So at 20, it'll be 100% revenue growth over the next 5 years. We put that number here. Number of outstanding shares. Now, for most analysts, there is no number on how much these shares will be in the next 5 years or how much expected decrease, because Palantir hasn't yet decreased its number of outstanding shares yet. But the most analysts do predict that numbers will decrease because they'll have more profit and more cash on hand to buy back shares. Since we don't know, I like to be conservative and say I think they'll be able to reduce about 3% over the next 5 years. And this is considering that they don't add any more share in case something happens. So we'll say they'll decrease by 3% over the next 5 years, which would bring their number to about 2.5 billion, and their revenue, if it increases by 100%, will be about $5 billion. Now, I don't need to say this, but 235 is a ridiculous PE. The only other company that I know that is like Palantir that had this kind of PE was ServiceNow. It was at like 250, 350 for like 2 years, and then it dropped to 80. I'm expecting the same thing to happen to Palantir. So I'm going to say its PE is going to be 80. Its profit margin, I think, is going to explode, but let's see what analysts think its profit margin is going to be. They think it's going to have a 20% profit margin in the next 6 years. And that's 20% per year. I don't like that. I think it's going to be higher, but that's what they're expecting. So based off the analyst's own expectations of this stock, you do the discounted cash flow and everything. In the future, 5 years from now, this stock will be worth $34.15, which makes it a bit of an undervalued from what it's trading in today. That's bullshit. I'm just gonna be quite honest. I think we got a little bit of bears going on here, but this is really low for Palantir. So let's see what it'll actually be if it can explode in growth like how I'm expecting growth. So in my personal opinion, I don't think it's gonna have 5 billion in revenue in 5 years. No ways. It's gonna be way more than 5 billion. It hasn't even begun to take market share in its own industry. Like, it created a brand new industry and it only has like one slither of the pie in that industry. So I think it's gonna be $10 billion, give or take, very easily. So that number is gonna be 10 billion. That's what my expectation is. So if that's true, that means a 400% revenue growth. That's not 400%, that's about 350, I would say. It's 300%. 350 revenue growth, still a little high, so let's say 300 revenue growth. There we go. So that's a 300 revenue growth. That I believe to be the same. I couldn't find any data on it, so I'm going to leave that the same. 80 still the same. Revenue is going to be 30 because ServiceNow has above 30% revenue, and is expected to be even wider. As these companies start to build out infrastructure, their profit margins go off the roof because they don't need to consistently keep building to expand anymore. They can just get more customers and spend a little bit on infrastructure because they can house more customers in the infrastructure they have set up. So I don't think it's going to be 20. I think it's going to be 30. So if it can grow its revenue like how I am expecting it, if it can decrease its outstanding share by 3%, and it has a PE of 80, in the next 5 years, its stock value will be $102. That means you will have almost 106% growth over the S&P 500. See, the S&P 500 is expected to only grow by 50% over the next 5 years, as where Palantir will grow by over 156%, giving you a net positive 106% over the next 5 years. Now, what analysts are saying is different from what I'm predicting. The reason why I'm predicting so high, because I understand the business. This is why you make educated decisions and beat the S&P 500 and all these analysts when you understand the business. Right now, Palantir's majority of its growth for Palantir comes from the government sector. It hasn't begun implementing this technology yet in the commercial sector. Once it does that, its revenue is going to explode. And this, I'll be honest, 10 billion, I'm being a bit conservative. I think this can hit 20 or even 30 billion. But I want to have a margin of safety when I invest. So that's why I'm using 10 billion as my own case basis to buy the stock. Now, you can do whatever you want. And I also should disclose, I have sold 8 Palantir stocks, almost decreasing my outstanding share in Palantir by 50%. But that's because I think we're headed towards a bit of a pullback and I want to have a little bit of cash. And this is something I'm experimenting with. If I'm wrong, I'll understand not to do it in the future. If I'm right, it'll give me confidence to maybe tinkle with partial portion control in the near future. It's something I'm experimenting with. But I want to know what you guys think. Do you think I'm outrageous? Do you think analysts are right? What are your thoughts and expectations of this stock? And what do you guys think about this stock analyzer tool?